This podcast is a Tom production recorded on Aboriginal land. For the context of who you are, everyone in Australia is very across it.
Have you heard the word matrescence? It is adolescence part 2. Even I was a little bit scared. I think that just demonstrates how much fear other people would have as well. And I ended up being hired at 30 weeks pregnant to be the president of Peanut. It's crucial that other women see pregnant women getting roles like this. It's just a process.
Welcome to Process the Podcast, a meeting of creative minds. Let's dive in.
Perfect.
Hello. So we've never met. Hey.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good.
So you've been up for a while.
I've been up for a while. Like, what is it's 8? It's past 8 right now.
Yeah, it's like 8:05 a.m.
I think I've been up since 3:50.
Okay.
Because when I've got a 13-week-old, and when he wakes up for a feed close to 4 or in the 4s, I just can't get back to sleep because I wake up. My alarm's set for 5:30.
Yeah.
This morning I had my first call at 5:45.
Oh my God.
So I just knew, and I wanted to shower. So I just thought it's better I just stay awake right now and just get to work.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I did.
For the context of who you are, everyone in Australia is very across it. All the working gals are like, Michelle Battersby, we love her.
Oh God.
They're like, yeah. So how, if somebody hasn't heard of you, what's like a little, just a dot point of like, I guess Bumble is Bumble where kind of it all began for you?
It is.
Yeah. So talk us through.
Okay, so I had a pretty standard career to begin with. I worked in HR in investment banks, and I did that for about 4 years straight out of uni. Then I had this realization that people around me cared about it more than I did, and that feeling got to me.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to do something about that. I knew I wasn't in the right career, but I didn't know where to start. I just had a feeling that it was wrong. So I began to talk to people about that, and one conversation led to me being introduced to the founder and CEO of Bumble, Whitney Wolfe Herd, and this was in 2016. I became about the 7th employee at Bumble globally, the first employee in Australia, and I was responsible for launching the brand into Australia and then eventually across the APAC region. But to kind of rewind, like how did that even happen when I went from HR? I think something important to call out is when you have a startup and it's not that established and it's not that well known, the people who actually do have the experience aren't usually the ones willing to take the risk and make the sacrifice. And so I was getting a job at a company I'd never heard of. None of my friends had heard of Bumble. And in 2016, dating apps had a pretty bad reputation. Like in Australia at that time, do you remember that Tinder balcony death where the girl she fell or was made to jump or pushed? That had just happened. And so there was a really bad feeling around dating apps. It was definitely seen as a last resort, a bit desperate. It wasn't as normalized in culture as it is today. And so I don't think Whitney really had many options for people that were going to take the role. And I had nothing to lose. I was 25, didn't know what I was going to do with my life. So I thought I may as well just give this a shot. And the deal was if I could grow Bumble to 1 million registrations, they'd create an entity in Australia. So I basically created my own little company that meant nothing. And I got a crash course in running and scaling a business with access to all of Bumble's capital. And it was a dream situation. And I hired 2 women younger than me because I knew what had worked in the US was a lot of grassroots marketing.
It was like college campuses and that kind of thing, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't at uni anymore, so I knew I needed people that were closer to that. So I hired these 2 other women, Charlotte and Tor, and we had the experience of a lifetime, got it to 1 million registrations in a year. They created an entity and it just kept growing.
I met my boyfriend on Bumble.
What?
Thanks.
Wow. In what year?
2020. 2022.
I can't fully take credit.
But then also, were you there in 2020?
I left just at the start of 2020.
Okay. So at the start of COVID, they were like, women in business that can't operate because of COVID, we're going to give you $5,000 grants. Apply. Yeah. I applied and they were like, hey, Ariel, you've you've won a grant.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I fully was on my stories crying because I'm in film. I was like, we had no idea. I couldn't pay my rent. I literally had no idea. And I was on my stories being like, thank you so much, Bumble.
That's amazing. Okay, love that. So you will have close ties
the guinea
to the
pig.
brand.
Yeah. Totally. And also I was sort of investigating Bumble BFF at a time as well because I was younger in sort of what I was doing. And I think that what was cool about Bumble BFF as an option was that there were women on there that also we just had that gap in their life of women that were putting themselves out there to make more friends. It was very expatty at the time, but I sort of liked that. It was overall just great.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I still to this day love a success story, and I have extremely fond, Bumble's just an amazing experience for me. Lifelong friendships.
Yeah.
It helped me find my passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of changed everything.
So then you left and started Sunroom.
Yeah. So I actually worked at another startup in between during COVID.
Great.
And I think even just hearing your story about the grant, crying on your stories, I think 2020 was a pretty exposing year. You know, for everyone. Yeah. I was living in Melbourne at the time in lockdown, spending a lot of time thinking about when I was at Bumble, because of the way it started, I began to think, could I create my own company and become an expert in launching American apps into Australia? I'd started to think like that, but I didn't feel like I had enough experience or enough skills just yet. So I felt like I needed to go somewhere else and get closer to a product, closer to headquarters, and then go and do my own thing.
Yeah.
I think the big realization I had in 2020 was when it comes to the products I work on and the products I market, I like almost having an argument with someone and having to change their perception.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what I liked about Bumble is I would be in bars talking to guys about why women should make the first move, and I'd be having this argument with them about gender roles and things like that. And when I was in lockdown, I got introduced to a woman who was also one of the first employees, but at Hinge, and she designed the Hinge product. And she was Australian, but she'd been living in New York for 8 years. Her name's Lucy Mort. She became my co-founder. We got introduced and she started talking to me about OnlyFans, and OnlyFans was blowing up. And I thought, this is interesting. I'm a bit scared of this space. I'm a bit scared of this topic, but I can see the opportunity there.
Yeah.
Basically, we began interviewing influencers, asking them if they'd thought about going on OnlyFans. All of them were saying yes, but they were scared about how they'd be perceived or that people would think they were doing nudity. And I was like, this is starting to feel a bit like how Bumble felt for me, where I could try to convince someone why women should be allowed to make money in this way, and why as a society we have made it shameful, and the kind of, I guess, the stigma that was in place at that time that was limiting creators from being able to make more money. I had a bit of a problem with that. So I began working with Lucy, my now co-founder, ex-co-founder, I don't know.
Former
co-founder, on what became Sunroom, which was a app for content creators that we sold earlier this year that was in the OnlyFans space. It kind of sat between Instagram and OnlyFans to have a different position and a different swing on how creators could put their content behind a paywall and make money. And the North Star was really about increasing revenue opportunities for content creators.
Yeah. I signed up as a curious little bean.
Okay.
I had no gusto or momentum behind me to create and actually monetize. But from what I did understand, I was like, this is sick. And I also love the name Sunroom, because Sunroom, when you are an Australian, a sunroom is the coziest, most dreamy little spot. A great name.
Honestly, how you just described it was exactly why we called it Sunroom. That was quite an intentional decision because we felt like the problems creators were having with OnlyFans and other platforms in that space at the time were that they weren't transparent about their content guidelines and what they stood for. And even people were having issues with that on Instagram. You're plus size and you get a post taken down. You're too opinionated and you get a post taken down. So we called it Sunroom because we wanted to be very clear about what was allowed, what wasn't allowed. We wanted it to feel warm and cozy, like you're looking inside someone's personal diary or something, and that's why you're paying to be there, because you know you're accessing something that's more intimate.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how big was your family when you sold Sunroom last year? Like, what was kind of the status of all that?
Oh, I'd had one child. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah. And you'd moved to LA?
Yeah, so I moved from as soon as the borders opened in Melbourne. I was like, I'm fucking out of here. And I was in my car with all my stuff back to Sydney, incorporated Sunroom, raised capital. But it was like it was a very 2020 story. Lucy and I had never met in real life. We also had a third co-founder at that time. So the three of us came together virtually, jammed on this product, built the wireframes, came up with a wait list of all these creators.
Yeah.
And then we raised money early 2021 and we all moved to LA in April 2021. And we'd kind of been working on this product for 5 or so months by then. And then we met each other face to face.
In Los Angeles.
In LA.
Oh my God.
Hired a team and yeah. It was weird. Like we basically built a product and raised money without ever having met each other in real life because we like physically couldn't.
Yeah. Wow. So what was the thinking of moving to LA and why not staying in Australia? Was it your husband plays sport here, right?
So he'd actually already moved to London when all of this was happening, but he was always moving to LA for rugby on a 2-year contract. But we'd always had we'd basically always had a long distance relationship. So I was kind of like, see ya, like it's just another 2 years, whatever. But when I started speaking to Lucy, she was living in New York and she'd been working for Hinge that was venture backed and she'd had much more experience. Even though I worked at Bumble, which was an American company, I was always based in Australia. So I'd never really felt the impact of being in the US, I suppose.
Yeah.
So we were really led by her. And she had said, if we're going to do something like this, I think it needs to be in LA. There are so many creators here. There's access to amazing talent because of San Francisco with engineers. You've got Silicon Valley. This needs to be venture backed. Would you move to LA to do this? And I just was like, yeah, that's perfect because my boyfriend at the time was already there. So it felt like it was meant to be.
Was it scary doing the whole raising capital thing? Or because you'd been around it for Bumble, it was like, I could do that. I know what a deck needs.
No, so Bumble was actually never venture backed.
Really?
No, it had one really rich backer. And so we always had money.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it was a very different startup experience because we never had runway that was like running out. We always had access to capital. So that was a very different experience to Lucy with Hinge, where they were constantly having to go and raise. And like Lucy tells this amazing story about when they had 40 grand left in the bank at Hinge and they just put it all into one party to see if it would save the company. And it did. Like just crazy stuff like that. Yeah. So Lucy had more of an idea on raising capital. But it actually happened a bit naturally without having to try too hard. When I was in Sydney for this period where I was getting my visa about to move to LA, we'd started to talk about the fact we were going to raise money, and Lucy had just done a fellowship with On Deck, which is like an accelerator type program for tech entrepreneurs, and On Deck had said they would invest in what we were building. So we'd started to get indication that people were interested.
Yeah.
And so I went to this lunch in Sydney and I was just talking to this table of people about what I was doing, and I didn't really realize who I was sitting across from at the time, but it's quite a well-known founder with a very successful business who also make investments. And she'd said, can you come to my house next week? Like, I want to hear more. Are you taking investors? And so she ended up that was the first pitch I ever did. I went to their house and pitched to her and her husband, and they offered quite a lot of money. And that gave me, we didn't end up actually taking their money, but it gave me the confidence to just start. So I actually went out on my socials and started talking about the fact that I was speaking to investors, and then people from funds were following me and they invited me to pitch to them.
Right.
Angels reached out to me. People I'd worked with at Bumble reached out to me, and I just started kind of collecting bits of cash whilst Lucy did the same. And so I think we raised 2.3 million US for our first round, which was a pre-seed.
Yeah.
And then we ended up raising on 2 other rounds. We raised 7 million US in total over the 5 years that we built Sunroom.
Okay. Right. So it doesn't sound too scary.
I think that what made it not so scary at that time was 2021, I'm pretty sure, was a record year for venture capital. It was the most amount that had ever been invested into businesses. OnlyFans was blowing up and all the funds were like, what is going to be the next OnlyFans? We know this space is hot, but they legally can't invest in porn type products.
Okay.
So because we didn't allow porn, we only allowed softcore, like sensual content. We could kind of skirt around most of these funds, like bylaws, I guess. And so it was just a really hot space. So that first round was actually so easy. And I remember I actually text Whitney this message, and like as I sent it, I reckon I'm gonna like regret saying this, but I said something like, did you just feel like it was so easy with Bumble? Like this feels like it's just all happening, and like we just closed this round and we like were knocking back people's money because we were overcommitted. And she was like, no, that's not how not how it felt. And honestly, I reckon the week after that message, it was just like problem after problem. It ended up
too big for your boots.
Yeah, it took us like a year to build the app because we came up with this patented technology that was actually really hard to implement in real life, but we'd already told the 100 creators on our wait list we were launching with this specific feature that they all liked. And so a lot of lessons were learnt, and Lucy and I call it, we parted ways with our third co-founder who was our lead engineer. So like we lost our technical co-founder. We had to replace with engineering contractors. We burnt through way too much of our capital, and Lucy and I refer to that as the trough of sorrow. And there's this startup graph you can look up, which basically talks about this peak that you first go through when you're validating it and maybe you're raising and you've got all this interest, and then the trough of sorrow, which I feel like it lasted years with Sunroom. We were like, when are we going to get out of this? Like it was just hurdle after hurdle.
Wow.
And yeah, like Sunroom was a very, very hard business, like very difficult space, very hard to grow, very hard from a like acquisition perspective, a lot of hands-on support needed to help creators, a bit of a difficult product for people to like get their head around, behaviorally very hard because society has been taught to expect content for free because of social networks. So a lot of education around why you're having to pay for people's content. Creators have to do a very good job at marketing themselves and their content to their followers. Like it's just not an easy business at all to get into.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
How did it feel wrapping up that chapter?
Oh, God, it felt good.
Really?
Yeah, because it was,
as you said, like a heavy lift.
It was such a grind. It was hard the whole way through. And we would get all these wins and we would have these people come onto our product and just make so much money. But there was no clear trend between the kinds of creators that would come onto Sunroom and find success.
Yeah, okay.
It felt like finding needles in a haystack. So you just have to do so much work to get those wins, and you had to like drive acquisition to the product all the time, and then you're kind of waiting for these like sparkles to kind of go off, and then like you burrow down and try and find more of them. But we had this advisor who was the VP of product at Patreon, and I remember finding a lot of comfort in him saying that they had never really figured that out either. Like the people that they thought were going to make the most money never really were the ones who would crack it. And then you'd have these people who were complete surprises. It was very rewarding, like someone coming onto your product and making tens of thousands of dollars in a day or a month, and them telling you that they've quit their full-time job, or you know, they're putting themselves through college, or they're doing this course they've always wanted to do, or they've bought a car. Like those are amazing things to hear, and that's what would keep us going. But Sunroom ended up we thought it could be huge. Like, we thought it would be the kind of thing that lots of different people could come on and monetize, but it ended up being a smaller community than we had anticipated. And that's why we started to go down the acquisition route, because we kind of watched these other competitors like max out of their niche and then either like fail or merge with like unfavorable terms and things like that. So we didn't want to find ourselves in that position. And there was a company that just seemed to be killing it over and over, which was Fanfix. And we had always watched them from the sidelines and just thought, how are they doing this? And I think in LA, they had created a bit more virality around their brand, and they'd been able to tap into Gen Z TikTokers more effectively than we had. So they were just bringing in way more volume. They have, tens of millions of users and traffic on their platform every day. And so once we started conversations with them and realized that they were open to acquiring us, we really went through a process of asking ourselves questions around like, what features do they have that we don't have that would enable our creators to make more money? Are they like generational platform? Like, are they going to be around forever? Because we would hate to go with someone who then
cuts the legs off your community. Yeah.
The stakes feel very, very high when your consumer are a lot of everyday women whose livelihoods depend on the money they make on your platform.
Yeah.
Like, if we fucked that up, they could be missing their rent. That's quite high stakes. And so I don't know if it's obvious to all people why it was very important to us to think about our creators, like how they're going to feel on this platform, and if they have similar content guidelines to ours, if their product is easy to use, if their content will still be protected, if the brand actually is creator first, because a lot of companies in this space say they are, but they're not. And that was one of the differentiating things with Sunroom, is we honestly really gave a shit. Like, Lucy and I were on calls with our creators all the time. They had direct access to us. It wasn't like you're on this platform where you're never going to speak to a real person who works at the company. And Fanfix have a very big creator experience team and are very hands-on in the same way that we were. So it ended up working out after like a very long, turbulent process that involved like other options as well. I don't know if this is the wrong thing to say, because obviously you want it to feel good for you as the founder as well. Like, acquisitions can look like many different things, like there were options where our team would have had to go and work for a company for a certain amount of time or work on monetization projects for those companies, but maybe our creators wouldn't have been as well looked after, but maybe we would have had whopping salaries, like there are just many different ways we could have taken it. But at the end, I just felt very free and excited that I could put a bow on that problem and that space and like move on to something entirely different.
Wow. It's amazing to just hear you talk about such obviously like a huge chapter of your life, to sum it up as a problem. Not that the whole thing was a problem, but I think there's a lot of, I'm almost embarrassed to admit that Remy, the gummy brand, is such a heavy lift, because so many people are like, energy, so is it creatine? And I'm like, no, it's not. These are the ingredients. And the education piece, I guess that is a heavy lift and a problem, but because I love it so much and I feel like I have to be I am the cheerleader of it. I feel like I'm not allowed to say out loud just how hard it is. You know what I mean?
Do you know what? You can't though. You actually can't right now because you're in it. So I feel like I can now because I'm not.
Yeah.
But at the time, how am I going to get anyone to download my app and use it? If I'm on my stories being like, oh, we've hit another hurdle.
Really hard day, guys.
Like fucking uphill battle yet again. Like, and that's why it also feels freeing, because like it was amazing and like we achieved so much and it was a win on paper. But I also, to your point, you don't hear about how hard it is when people are in it, because that's not a good marketing strategy.
No.
Like, it's just, you can speak about it to an extent, sure, and you can be honest and you can be vulnerable, but you can't really like call it exactly what it is whilst you're still in it.
Just forget I said this, guys. Romy's amazing.
But I mean, I think you can speak more specifically, like with the TGA, for example, like that is going to be one of your things that you're always going to have to navigate. And with us, it was Apple and the fact that they would moderate our platform. And like, if we weren't on top of our moderation, they could just turn us off. They could just not approve our updates. Like,
wow. Yeah, that's crazy. I love hearing when founders just mention one thing that is in their like suitcase of issues that we just wouldn't even really think about.
Oh my God. Our patented technology was this anti-screenshot technology that we got approved by Apple because it like plugged into a certain piece of their tech. So they said, yep, you can do this. So then we build it out, get the patent. Lucy and I have already done interviews that are going live on the day. Our product launches, we've got 100 creators ready to use our app. They've been uploading content in the background. And then it was a matter of days before our live date. We submitted our app to Apple for like final approval and updating, and they rejected our anti-screenshot tech. And we were like, holy fuck, like this is our huge news. Like this is our secret sauce. Like this is our innovation. This is what is making people want to use our product. This is what we're screaming from the rooftops. And now they've told us we can't use it. It's pretty hard to speak to people at Apple in places of power when you're a brand new app and you're not making any money for them. There's millions of apps on the App Store. Like they don't give a fuck.
They're not going to answer the phone.
To be honest. And so it ended up being one of our investors that is a billionaire that makes money for them, that we were like, hey, we really need you to tap someone on the shoulder and help us out because we are getting nowhere. And within that 24-hour window of us launching, they approved it. But we were spiraling. Like we had no
Money
idea.
Talks, doesn't it?
What was going to happen. A lot of people are like, why would you raise capital? People are scared of raising capital. But it also can be so strategic. And it's like you've got all these brains around your table.
Your cap table is like a mind hive.
Yeah.
If you need it to be.
Yeah. That want you to succeed. And I don't know if we would have been able to get that through in time or without a bit more of a fight if we didn't have access to people like that.
Yeah, interesting. I was on actually a Soho House committee, like welcome. We're at Soho House right now, guys. We haven't mentioned that. And I was sitting next to, when we all got kind of assigned onto the committee, I was sitting next to these guys and we got taken out on the Raise Water Goes boat. We were on this boat and we all kind of went around in a circle being like, who we are. And it's not the kind of environment where you can bring a plus one. So nobody really knew each other. And if they did, it was sort of only through business. And I was sitting there and I started talking to this guy, Ben, and then another guy. And they were like, tell so-and-so about the gummies. This sounds amazing. And these guys have like made millions in the medicinal cannabis space and like real heavy hitters. Another guy owns a sporting talent agency, amazing for an energy gummy. Like, and I didn't really realize what he was asking me to do, but he was like, tell him about it. I was pitching, but I didn't realize that I was pitching. And then we went around in a circle. And I was like, hey, I'm Ariel, blah, blah, blah. I'm working on this. We had to say like how long we've been a member for, blah, blah, blah. And then this guy sitting next to me was like, I might invest in a gummy brand soon. And just like looked over at me like, that was really impressive. And I was like, oh, okay. And then so many people are like, why would you invest? Like, don't do that. That's so exactly to your point. Like, don't do that. But even the conversations and what they can bring to the table and just what I learned even from an hour of him just asking me questions about things I hadn't even thought of.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is why.
Yeah. Honestly, there's so many points on that. Like the first one is I think that raising money has a really bad rep.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't think you should take money from just anyone. Like if it feels off, don't do it. But especially if you're taking cash from institutions, like they've also got reputations to uphold, you know? Like I think a lot of people have the assumption that you'll lose control and that you'll have someone telling you what to do. But that doesn't happen till much later.
Yeah.
You know, like that doesn't happen until you're like doing price rounds and like you're fucking going, you know, like you're succeeding and it's going to work out for you. You know, in those early rounds, you're not giving away control. Like you are bringing people on board who will be able to help you out. And the better you do, the more you can demand what the terms look like as well. And like you can shut things down if you have options on the table. So there's that. And then also how you were just on a boat and like probably just spitballing, you know, you weren't in this high pressure environment. An investor said something to me that is just so true. And he said, if you want advice, ask for money. And if you want money, ask for advice. Like when you have that kind of the desperation element there, or like you're explicitly asking someone for money, that often won't be the most like successful environment. It's kind of like how I just went on my Instagram stories and just started talking about it. And I was like presenting these insights like you probably were when you were telling your story.
Yeah.
It's like you're getting people more invested in the problem, you. And when you just start asking people questions, you're inherently displaying your own knowledge and starting to talk more about your own product that makes people be like, ooh, she's onto something. I want a piece of that. Yeah. So I always recommend to people, like, even when you're first making those relationships with funds or you're hitting angels up or whatever, it's not about I'm raising a round and I want to know if you'd be interested. It's like I'm working on this. I've identified this problem.
Yeah.
Wonder if you have any companies like this in your portfolio. I'd love to fill you in on where I'm at with it, share some data with you, get some advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's amazing advice from you. Thanks, girl. By the way, I didn't ask you about your gummy. How's your brain?
I guess good. Have I just gone up a gear?
Yeah.
Have you noticed a change?
Yeah, I think so. That's why I was like, she is on.
Oh my God. So good.
Remy works, guys, just so you know.
Testimonial, a live testimonial.
So I have many like leadership style questions for you because I'd love to get the tea on Michelle Battersby's decision-making process. Okay. However, what you've done at Peanut recently and the timing, the way that you are growing a family, literally, and all of your timing is so interesting and I feel like really challenging what women know to be true of what we can and can't do. Can you talk me through Peanut, your role there, how that came about, and your pregnancy status, if you will?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so it's all kind of intertwined. So Peanut is it's basically a social network community platform for women at different life stages. So you can track your pregnancy, meet up with mums with similar aged children. It's got menopause tracking and insights, toddler milestones, forums, and it's actually the biggest social networking platform for women in the world. So there's millions of women on it. And it was founded, even stuff I didn't really know before I stepped in there. And it was founded by a woman called Michelle Kennedy, who was on the board at Bumble, and she actually came up with the name Bumble. So she was this like famous kind of icon when back at the start of Bumble. And then I knew that she went on to found Peanut, and I'd been following her journey, and she ended up investing in Sunroom. So she had seen what I had been doing there. She knew we were running an acquisition process, and I ended up just reaching out to her, starting to talk about what I was going to do next. I was thinking maybe I would consult or, I just started to think about. It looked like things at Sunroom were about to wrap up very quickly, then they didn't. So I met up with her and one thing led to another, and she kind of presented this idea that I should come and help her expand and grow Peanut. And I just thought, this is like too good to be true. I was a mum at that stage. I had about a 14-month-old son, and I'd become very obsessed with the motherhood space and the problems women face as they navigate that, especially relating to career and motherhood and the boxes, I think, more broadly we're just pushed into as women. I wanted to kind of go back and focus on something like that. But when she brought this up, I just thought there's no way this works out for me like this. Like it's just it's too perfect. But it did end up working out. So I was pregnant this first conversation I had with her, but I was having complications. So I didn't actually know if I was going to have a second child. It was kind of like in the back of my mind. And it did scare me a bit, to be honest, because I think we're just all conditioned to worry about if that might jeopardize certain opportunities. And we've all seen things, we've been exposed to things that there are true threats to pregnant and parent women and just women more broadly when it comes to hiring and things like that. I ended up being hired at 30 weeks pregnant to be the president of Peanut. Of course, I shared with Michelle that I was pregnant, and she just responded in a way that was like textbook perfection, which I did know deep down would be the way she would respond. But I think it's interesting that even me navigating that with someone I know and trust and a brand product in the femtech space, even I was a little bit scared. I think that just demonstrates how much fear other people would have as well. And I think why representation is so important. Like it's crucial that other women see pregnant women getting roles like this and mothers at the table, and not just in femtech companies but everywhere. But I think if femtech companies can't fly the flag, then like what hope do we have?
So what's the timing there of you kicking off the role? Was the expectation that you would start have your baby? What did you name your baby that you now have?
Bobby. So I've got a 13-week-old at the moment.
Yes. Okay.
So I started and worked for 2 months.
Okay.
And I just kind of got up to speed, met the team. I couldn't really kick off at anything strategic during that time, but it was really good to just be reactive, help people out, get into the weeds, learn the product, get to know everyone.
Right.
And then I left, had my baby, took 3 months off, and this is my first week back. So so I've just started, and I've got 2 kids. I've got a 1.5-year-old and a 3-month-old at the moment, which is interesting.
Yeah. So what is your thought process in going all in like that and not giving yourself, I guess, it's not grace that we give ourselves, but I guess it's that like earned bubble where we're just there with the baby.
It's so interesting because with Alfie, my first child, I had him when I was running Sunroom, and I took 4 weeks off and then I went back to work.
Is that just because you naturally are very eager on, like, what was the thing? What is in your makeup that's why you chose to do that?
When I first became a mum, I was very desperate to prove that nothing changed, that I could still do it, that I could just like walk back into that business like I hadn't just grown and birthed a whole human.
Ain't no thing, it's fine.
Yeah.
Why though? Why are you like that?
I think because I was so scared to become a mum, because I was worried it would jeopardize my career, I almost felt like I needed to prove to myself in maybe quite extreme ways that it wouldn't. So I think there's that piece, but then I think there was also the piece of Sunroom still really needed me there. Like I didn't really feel like I could afford to leave for that long. I probably could have, like maybe there was a bit of an element of control, maybe there was a bit of an element of guilt. No one else at Sunroom had a family. I was the first one going through it. I wasn't really seeing examples of how people were navigating that. So I think there's a lot that played into it. And
so if you took more, you would feel selfish almost, to be like, I'm stepping out for this long because I need it.
Yeah. I actually did view becoming a mum as almost a selfish thing to do to Sunroom. You know, like I've got all these employees, I've got these investors, I've made promises. And I do think it's a bit of that tech founder narrative that like pushed that on me, that made me feel like it's like not a space for fresh mums, perhaps. It is male dominated. But I also had to do a lot of unlearning. Like there's a lot of limiting belief in everything that I just said. There's a lot that actually wasn't a real threat to me. Like I built a business, women founded, women focused. I'd attracted a group of investors that back women. You know, like you weed out the dodgy ones when you are mission led. So my investors were all like, good on you, you know, like this is great. There were no issues. Like my team weren't doubting my commitment, but those are certain things that I worried about. So I had to do a lot of thinking, like if any of my investors have an issue with this, like they should not be on our table anyway.
Yeah, okay.
You know, if my business can't survive without me, maybe I haven't really established that good a business, you know, but like those were kind of the things I was having to work through.
Yeah.
I also did a lot of therapy at the time because we say all these things like, you know, I took 4 weeks off, I took 3 months off, I took a year off, I took 5 years off, and it's all like kind of abstract when it comes to time, you know, like there's not a one size fits all approach, and different people will judge different timelines, and there are different challenges on either end of the spectrum. Like I get a lot of women in my DMs who have maybe taken like a 5-year career break and now they're like, how do I re-enter the workforce? But then I've got other women who are judging themselves for returning after 6 months because they feel like they really need it for their souls and to like show up as the best version of themselves. Or maybe they don't have other options, you know, like maybe they either have to stay out of the workforce because of finances, or maybe they have to re-enter the workforce because of finances. Like there's just different challenges for everyone. So in my therapy sessions, I actually did a lot of just completely detaching any judgment from the amount of time I took. Like I don't look back on taking 4 weeks and think, oh, it was only 4 weeks. I feel really bad about that. Like that's not something that I feel. And even now just taking 3 months off, that actually felt like, oh my God, like this is amazing. This is so much time. Like I'd never, with Alfie, I couldn't properly disconnect because it was my own business.
Yeah.
With Peanut, because I'd kind of just started for 2 months and I hadn't really got super deep into strategy. It was like this, it was definitely intense and I was working hard and I wanted to make a really good first impression, but it was a very nice period where I could kind of come in, establish myself, take a beat and really disconnect. Like I didn't check my emails. I maybe did like a couple of urgent calls and one podcast. That was it. And I just, my only plan every day was my baby. I basically was just in bed for 3 months, like breastfeeding on tap. And I haven't not worked. Like, even though of course you're working, it's like a completely different focus, but I'd never done something like that since I was like 14 and started working. So I think I do feel like I had a very different experience this time around. But I guess to kind of go back to actually answering the question why I kind of jumped straight into another role whilst pregnant, I did think about, should I just take a break right now and be with my kids, or should I start, and not that it's really a break, but you know, just different vibe. Should I start my own company? Like, do I take one of these other offers that's kind of come up through like this acquisition process? Like there were other things bubbling around. That first conversation with Michelle where she like presented this as a potential opportunity, I just became like fucking obsessed with it. Like from the moment it was in my mind that I could like, you know, help lead this company, it started to remind me of how I felt at Bumble. Like it felt big. Like I could get my hands back on a big brand. I could say bold things. I could actually make a difference in women's lives. And when I had Alfie, I did, like, I know now through hindsight that I did have postpartum depression and I wasn't in a good state. And I knew what Peanut was and I downloaded it, and it was how I made my first mum friend. And I would kind of just stalk these forums and I would see other people talking about their struggles, and it was a lifeline for me. Like it actually does save women in some of their brightest moments. It like gives them a sense of community, but in some of their darkest moments as well, it shows them that what they're experiencing is being felt by others. Motherhood can be very isolating. So it just lit this fire in me. And when Lucy and I started Sunroom and we co-founded it without having met each other in real life, we did this co-founder questionnaire to see if we would be compatible. And one of the questions was about an ikigai. Do you know what an ikigai is? Yeah. So it's like what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for, like what you can make money for.
And it comes together visually like a Venn diagram. They all kind of overlap.
Yes.
Yeah. And hopefully you find what it is that your purpose essentially in the center-ish.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And because we were selling Sunroom, Lucy and I had started like reflecting on loads of things, and I had like stumbled on my ikigai that I had done in 2020. And it kind of broke me in a way because I realized that with Sunroom, it kind of started to turn into something I didn't necessarily want it to be in order to make money. And it almost strayed a little bit from our original vision, which can happen with businesses. And another thing I found really hard about it is because it was such a grind to grow, I was almost in a sales type role the whole time at Sunroom, like constantly pitching, constantly selling, constantly hand holding. And I felt like I didn't get to utilize I didn't get to like play my best game with like the stuff I'm really good at because I had to take on different roles, which again is just something you have to be willing to do as a founder. And so I just rediscovered my ikigai, and then I'd also just gone through this huge transition into being a mum and like rediscovering myself now. I'm also a mother, and this conversation with Michelle, it also just brought me back to all the things I had put on a page about what I'm good at, what I love, what the world needs, what I can make money for.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, sure, I've got other options of things I can do, but like this is like touching my soul. Like this is deeply personal, and I know I'm a hard worker and I'll give a lot to my career, but now that I'm a mum, I don't have the energy to like hold myself to those standards if I don't fucking love it. And Peanut is just very intertwined with my life stage, and the everyday things I'm doing right now are just like constantly sparking ideas where I'm like, that could be a campaign, need to talk about that. This person just said this to me on the street, like that should be, it's like all. And I think that's when you're in your flow state, like it doesn't really feel like work.
Yeah.
It's just the stuff that's constantly in the back of your head, and you have these everyday moments and everyday interactions that can be strategic. It's like your lived experience is informing your strategy, and so it feels much easier.
Yeah.
So this was a very long answer, but like all of that contributed to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at then your role now, how did you decide that 3 months was enough? Was it that the window was going to close with Peanut, so you kind of were like, oh, I need to step into this now because this does feel right? Or was it more like passion-led and you were like, actually, I can do this. Yes, let's go.
Yeah. Honestly, Michelle was like, it's all good. Like, this is here. She knew where like our acquisition process was at as well. That dragged on for so long.
Yeah.
She knew where I was at with my pregnancy. It was, I guess, a bit of a weird starting time, but I wanted to just get in there and understand it before I was going to take a bit of a break. But no, it wasn't like the window is closing. It definitely was like I was actually trying to push her to let me start whilst we were still like signing paperwork and things. I was like, please just
let me at him.
Just let me begin. Like, I've got all of these ideas. And she was like, no, please wait. And even when I was telling her about, like pregnancy and taking time off, I was like, I took 4 weeks without you. Like, I can take 4 weeks again. And she was like, please don't. And in California, 3 weeks is standard. Like, that's the government parental leave. So in a way, I wanted to also know how it felt to experience what most women here
That's so interesting,
will feel, just so I can relate to them a little bit more and know how it feels returning to work and the emotions that come up with that. So honestly, I feel like very comfortable with this, and I definitely had moments where I thought, oh, I'm not ready, I can't do this. But that's exactly what came up when I went back with Alfie as well. I just thought there's no fucking way I'm going to be able to survive tomorrow. And then the moment comes around and you actually do, and you realize, for me, I found this week, I mean, it's only day 3, but it's been very, I've just had all these moments where I have kind of exhaled because I'm like, oh, this is exactly why I picked this. Like, I'm just reminded why I wanted to do this, why I care so much about this, why I am so excited about this role and the product, and I just see so much potential, and it just feels like how I want work to feel. And there's a lot of things that make it easier to juggle being a mum as well. Like I work predominantly with the UK. I start my days very early. I finish earlier. I have the whole afternoon with my kids. Then I can kind of do more work later if I want.
Yeah.
But it's just structured in a way that's quite favourable to my life stage.
Yeah.
And I think it also is highlighting why remote work is so great if you are a parent. I think remote work can get a bad rep. And to be honest, I don't think it's the best decision in all companies and environments or for all people, to be honest. Like I think entry-level employees really lose out when it comes to remote work. But I am being reminded right now why this kind of flexibility is just so amazing at allowing me to show up as a career woman and a mum.
Yeah. I'm in a really interesting phase of 2026 being a huge growth year for Cinematome going global and having to set up different markets, figure that piece out. Remy is also in its very early phases, but we will be introducing magnesium and like the sleep product, and we'll go into creatine because women with creatine is so important. And I'm sort of at that phase where I just look at it all and I've frozen my eggs. However, I will probably be speaking to my boyfriend about when and how and what towards the end of this year. We just had 3 weeks in New York together for Christmas and it was so nice.
Yeah.
And we were like, when do we want to have this chat? I'm 33. And he's like, well, when are you ready? He's like, so ready now. And I'm like, but the conversation, I haven't spoken about this on the podcast either. The conversation is probably going to come to a head of what are we thinking about towards the end of this year to then either like start trying or have just more open conversations about it. It won't be, this year is sort of like, no, we're running as hard as we can towards our goals. We're all in. There is no conversations about babies being had and motherhood. But then I'm like, okay, cool. Like imagine a little graph going upwards and then you're like, oh, okay, I have to stop. And then I've also got all those things that you just mentioned about being a founder and being, hang on, I've got employees. Like I can't lead and selfishly then be like, bye, I've got to start a family now. Like how that changes, because I will inherently change, but then I won't. And I'm also in the exact same boat as you being like, I will prove to myself that I can do this. It's wild. And I guess it's so personal as well. So like, how do you even do it? Because like you just have to, no one's ever ready and all the things. It's like, well, you can try to be ready, but just now is the best. There's so many anecdotes that the whole universe gives you of like, there's never a good time, just do it.
Yeah.
All those things.
I know. Also, like if I've learned one thing about motherhood and having kids, like every single person's experience is different.
Yeah.
And there's so much noise and there's so much advice, but it's so circumstantial. It's based on you as a person who's an individual. Your baby is going to be an individual. It's just like it's not the same for everyone. And so how you find it is just not predictable. And I think that's what makes it scary because it's not something you can control.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty in becoming a mum is actually once you let go of that control and you realize that and you allow yourself to just become like this expanded version of who you were before. And some of who you were before will come with you and other parts you'll realize you don't need anymore. And you'll maybe feel a slight mourning for like who that person was, but that mourning is like replaced with this precious little angel who just like lights you up and has just exposed you to this whole new world. And I think it does like expand your brain and it offers so much more perspective. And like I can go on and on and on about all the ways motherhood changes you for the better and how it changes how you show up at work. But it also might really challenge how you show up at work and it might really challenge your passion and maybe your gummy brand changes into gummies for babies, you know?
Yes, 100%.
Sleep gummies for babies. Like, you just don't know. But I've also realized there's so much power in, this is something I worked through my therapist with, like I kind of got to this point where I just realized I'm actually completely fine with who I am as a person if I don't have my career. Like I'm a whole person in motherhood as well. And I would be comfortable like going down that road if it's what I truly wanted as well. But I currently still really like hold my career in the same level of importance and care and passion. And so that's why I put the work into both. But it's also like fucking hard, you know, like there's just so much that goes into it. And like women, we're not supported in the way that we should be, you know, and there are systems that are up against us. And I just wish childcare was accessible and free, and, you know, we're making incremental changes, and, you know, even things like I want to see more dads taking parental leave, because then I think it just sways companies more and more to be more understanding and supportive of parents in general, as opposed to this expectation that the woman, you know, takes more time away. There's so many ways we can improve this space, but it's so hard because I don't think you ever really feel ready. Like I don't think you can determine if you're ready for a baby. No one can determine that. But I do think you can determine if you're ready for a lot of change and to become a different version than you are now. And that used to really scare me. I say this on and on, but I think it's really important. Like, it used to really scare me when I would hear people say you were going to change, because that's the thing I was fighting against when I first had Alfie, because I thought that change meant loss, less committed, less determined, less successful. But it doesn't. It actually can, you know, make you more powerful, can make you more focused, can give you much more clarity. You know, it's just a process. I also keep talking about this other thing. Like, have you heard the word matrescence?
Yeah. How do I know that word?
So it's basically like, this is why you change. And I just think
is this what you spoke about it on Hot Smart Rich?
Yes.
Yeah.
So like, it is adolescence part 2. When you become a mum, you go through matrescence. So I just think if more people knew what matrescence was, it's like, yeah, of course you're going to change. It's not really like for better or worse. It's just different. And it's different for everyone. Like, people go through different hardships through adolescence. It's like with matrescence round 1 for me, I had postpartum depression and anxiety. This time around, I'm like almost too happy. I'm like, is something wrong with me? I'm like, I love this. Like, I want to have 5 more. But with Alfie, I was like, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah, wow.
And it's like nothing to do with like not loving your baby. It's just can be very hard on your identity, but also like your support system, like having that village. My setup was very different with Alfie than it was with Bobby. And so it's been a live example for me of how important it is if you have support and community, which is also why Peanut exists, which is why I care about this so much.
Yeah, you can tell how much you care about it. And it's so exciting for, I feel like, the women that are signed up to Peanut and the future Peanut users to have somebody at the helm that cares so much. Like, that's a beautiful thing in itself. Like, because you're essentially doing them a service. Like, you're there to serve and make their experience better. How amazing that business has found somebody like you to step into it, that's eating, living and breathing those issues, and then in turn can make the product better.
Well, honestly,
amazing.
This is like how I've thought about the whole Peanut team. Like, since starting, one of the hardest things, and you would know this, having a business, is it is finding people who truly care. And who show up and give it their best shot and like deeply care about the user and their problem. And I've been so impressed, because starting at Peanut, that's just honestly how I feel each day. Like, each individual is so good at their job and really cares. And finding those sorts of people is, like 80% of the challenge.
How do you as a leader find those people? Do you have any tips on that?
I feel like we need to ask Michelle Kennedy. not me.
But amazing that she's obviously found you through like compounding, a very long-term relationship. And those people, like, it's like you won't just find them on a LinkedIn application. Those people are in your orbit and you meet them over time. And
I honestly think that's it. Like, I think when you're starting a business, and especially if you raise capital and you have money to spend, it's pretty big in tech as well to kind of hire these people who have been like ex-VP at Apple, Google, Microsoft. You know, they've kind of got that like status behind their CV. And like, maybe as I'm saying this out loud, maybe I'm like, maybe I have an element of that, but like, but different. I think, you know, I think my experience isn't super institutionalized. I think that's the the point I'm trying to make is I find
you've got dot points though.
yeah. They're just a bit chaotic, but I think that's like what you almost have
chaotic.
to look for.
You had a chaotic experience on paper. They're not chaotic.
Yeah.
It's like Bumble and then started your own thing and then exited and now you're here. You know, it's simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is like the personality though. Like some of our best hires at Sunroom were like totally inexperienced, had like never done anything like this before, but they did really care about the problem or the engineering challenges, or they were the sort of person that just never took no for an answer. Like they'd keep kind of pushing and pushing.
How do you find out that those people are like that though in the hiring cadence?
Do you know what? I actually heard on Hot Smart Ridge. Have you listened to her episode with Stephen Bartlett?
Not yet. It's on my list.
He actually framed this up so well. Maggie asked a question that was like, why'd you pick me or something like that?
Yeah.
And he spoke about this questionnaire that they do, and there's a certain question and it is about how much you will push if you get a no. And I think that the question was something like, you're planning an event, a piece of merch won't be available that is like you critically need it for this event to succeed. It's not going to be available by the date. Do you push the event back, come up with a way to like create something similar, not the same, not as good, or do you challenge the supplier?
Yeah.
And apparently most people won't pick I challenge the supplier.
Oh.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, just move the date.
Yes. I think most.
Wrong answer.
Like apparently that's what most people pick.
Wow.
Yeah. Apparently most people don't pick. Like I'd go back to the supplier and I'd ask them, why are your lead times this long? And then like figure out something to maybe change to make the lead time shorter, or like this is missing some elements that make it a wow moment.
Yeah.
But it was something like that. And I thought that is a good example and a way to find someone. I've always described myself as like, I'll just keep pushing.
Yeah.
Like I don't really take no for an answer. Like I'm even having a conversation with someone in my team at the moment about why a brand has said something needs to be a certain way. And I'm like, I want to hear it for myself because I'm not accepting this. Like I want to keep pushing on it. And I think that is maybe a part of it.
Yeah. So, but in the hiring phase, do you think then people should be doing like quite rigorous like surveys and stuff to literally get to that? Because like in my position, right, I've got one full-time I'm on. If we were to hire somebody else right now and we wanted somebody who was a problem solver and was going to give it their all and that kind of thing, how do you identify in the short-term hiring cadence that person is that person?
I'd probably come up with a question like that that's open-ended and like see how someone handles it. Or maybe you can tie it to a challenge you've had in the business that's like a live example.
Yeah.
I also have an interview question we used to ask at Sunroom, which was revealing in a sense. It's super simple and it's tell me about a time you won something, just to see like maybe what they think I mean with winning something. Like I've had the wildest responses to that question, ranging from people winning business grants to people telling me they think they won with their boyfriend. So it's just like.
And what were you looking for usually in that question?
Just competitive spirit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But also like there are certain things I just never would have known about someone that became a bit of an X factor. Like they talk about creative writing, or like when they did something through university, just demonstrates different things about a person.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other good ones we had at Sunroom, but it's been a while.
Every one that I've hired, I've asked them to make a vision board and explain it to me, because then that way I found that they then are like, it shows how confident they are in what they want and how confident they are in their ability to explain it and share it with you why they want that.
That's a great one.
And that one has been good, but I feel like a little bit kooky, being like, let's make a vision board. And they're like, why? Why do you want to see this? But I'm like, I want to know you.
It's very current. I love it.
Yeah, early 2026, vision boarding. Yeah, 100%.
My background on my phone's a vision board right now.
Same. Yes. And I was like, I went into Pinterest and I was like, bank statements, like bank account, like amounts. So I was like wanting, because I want to like 2x the business at the moment. One came up like,
no, I have a bank account on mine.
Yes.
I literally have a bank balance on mine. I was like, Chase bank account with X amount of dollars in it.
Yeah, mine was like $4 million. It was the first one I saw on Pinterest. I was like, that'll do.
Yes.
I don't know.
Do you know what? I actually thought someone saw my phone the other day. I was like, this is a bit embarrassing. What if they think that's my actual bank account?
Who knows? Whatever. Yeah. Killing it. Yeah. Absolutely killing it. It's a good thing. And then I put an engagement ring on it.
Oh, love it.
But more so that I get a good one. I don't want him to go blind. I think he'll consult my mum.
I like this. You're by osmosis. Yeah. He's learning.
Yeah. I'm you'll know the one that I want, the kind of style that I want because it's right here. Yeah. And
oh, but I think
imagine if you got it wrong.
They're not that smart.
No, I did show and tell with him.
Okay, good. I was presented it to you.
I was I sat him down and I was okay, I've done my vision because we were in New York and it was snowing outside and I was this is a fun activity. Okay. Let's do this. I was so annoying. He's sure. I was show and tell. This is what we're doing. And I was and this is the engagement ring. And I just looked at him and he's so this year. And I was why not?
Wait, this is so funny because I made my partner do a vision board. I was I've done this. You need to do yours. Show me a vision board. And for a week, I was is your vision board ready?
What did he put on it?
Oh, it was very male. A certain car, a restaurant. He's got a cafe, wants to turn it into a restaurant. A jacked man because he's getting into the gym, running. Yeah. A couple of holidays.
Yeah,
family.
He did one too. My boyfriend's name's Lazar. He put the ski slopes on there. He also so
we're
cute.
Just outing our partners.
Their vision. Lazar, also my hair's naturally really, really curly. He found an influencer that I take curl tutorials from sometimes because she just sometimes seeing her with her natural curly hair, sometimes I'm it is beautiful. I should sink into that. He found it and he put the back of her head walking. He's I want you this year to have more curly hair and how can I help you feel beautiful in that? And I was holy shit, that's the cutest thing.
Oh my God.
I was I love you. You just got so many points for that.
That's really
so
sweet.
His vision board also made me fall more in love with him. Yeah, through his vision board activity.
So nice.
It was really cute.
Is he a Pisces?
No, he's a Libra. No, I don't know. No, he's definitely not Pisces.
Okay.
I actually don't know. I should find out. Is that really bad? Your face.
I think you should.
How do you not know?
Do you know his birthday?
Yeah, September 24. I don't know what that makes him.
I think that is.
Pisces is March.
Wait, I just had a Libra and he's early October. So he must be Libra.
Yeah, he's a Libra then.
Yeah.
I always date Libras. So weird.
Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah.
We digress. Anyway, back to leadership. So we've done some great leadership with our men in our lives. So I think I would love to ask about personal filters and checklists that you run opportunities through. Are there things that you always some leaders, for example, are does this add to revenue? No, don't do it. Are there any things that you as a person are I take this everywhere with me, everywhere I go?
I've got a bit of a formula for personal decision making when it comes to taking risks.
Yeah.
Which is based off honestly, it was something that I was just doing naturally. And then I heard it from Tim Ferriss and he'd intellectualized this process that I have.
Yeah.
Have you heard this?
No.
It's these 4.
I mean, maybe, but I don't know.
It's 4 different questions that you ask yourself when you're making big decisions. So the first one is you're defining what could go wrong. So quitting my job, starting my own business, it could fail in the first year and never make any money. Maybe I can't raise capital. All those sorts of things. Maybe I don't get a visa to the US and this is a waste of time. Then you come up with preventative action. It's okay, if that happens, worst case scenario, I move back to Australia, move in with my parents and try and get a job. Maybe I try to go back to Bumble,
okay.
You're coming up with, well, what's the worst that can happen? And then you kind of realize this is fine. I've got fallback options. Maybe you've got savings. You're all good. This is the part of this exercise that I really, really like, the third question. And it is, what would partial success look like if you did it? Because I think a lot of the time we think about huge end goal. I sell my company for X amount of millions, this many people use it. Here's the headlines about what I've done. But if you bring it back, what would partial success look like? You're kind of de-risking it and you're realizing, even if I take a swing at this and it does half as good as I think it can, that's actually pretty rewarding. And then the fourth part is you imagine what your life would look like 6 months out, a year out if you don't do it, if you don't take the opportunity.
Okay.
And I think that's the part that I've always thought about. Like, I have always thought, what's the worst that can happen here? And will I regret it if I don't take this opportunity? And I think that's why all my career moves have been pretty big and bold, I guess, because I constantly ask myself, is this the kind of opportunity that will still be there in 5 years? Like, when I was making the decision to come to Peanut, I had this other opportunity that was like very, very stable with like a lot of other things involved. But I kind of felt like, well, I can do that in 5 years if I want. I can do that in 10 years. Like, that's always going to be there for me. Whereas like how I feel about this product right now and this space right now and this role right now isn't going to be there in 5 years.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I go about like more personal processes. And then when it comes to like everyday business and what I'm spending my time on, I definitely think about like, how does this actually grow and move the needle forward? And I think one of the hard things with startups is revenue is definitely a big piece, like revenue and registrations, but you also can't be afraid to spend money and spend time on brand awareness and things that will just elevate your voice or push you into pop culture or help you go viral on TikTok. Like, I think all of those moments combined with other more like performance paid intentional stuff helps everything grow across the board. And I don't think you can abandon the brand storytelling side of things, which is another reason why I really wanted to go to Peanut, because they actually recognize that. Some companies really don't. And from a marketing perspective, it's fucking annoying when you have like really great big ideas and then someone wants to see like on paper what the return on investment is going to be, and you're like, I actually don't know.
Yeah, it's not quantifiable.
Yeah, but we'll probably see a rise in things that we can't tie to an exact data point off the back of this, and like all these people who don't know about our business will know about it, and this person's going to want to come to our next event, and like this person's going to write about us. You know, it's like, that's kind of the fun stuff, I think, that keeps morale up as well. So it's definitely about finding a balance. I have a question that I just like presented to the team this morning, actually. When I was on parental leave, I started a note in my phone. We should be doing that moments. I was like, this year I want us to show up and I want all the other brands and companies in our space to look at us and think, fuck, we should have done that.
Yeah.
Just over and over. And like, what are the big moments that will create that kind of a response? Like, oh my God, there they go again. Like, they're just nailing it and like taking big bets, making big swings, actually making an impact and a change. And yeah, it's cool that Peanut's the kind of product that can actually do that.
When you are working with your finance team and stuff on big swings like that, and we should have done that, in terms of like, because your background is marketing and like that's where your sweet spot, and ideas and ideation and ideas for campaigns. You've mentioned you come up with them on the fly. How do you work through allocating finance and backing your own ideas to be like, will this work?
I try to significantly de-risk it by actually not spending our own money on it, by like working with brand partners. And I think that's also another amazing thing about Peanut. There are millions of mothers on this platform. And like, women are controlling like consumer spending decisions. Brands really want to get in front of mums, and mums are using our product to decide what they're going to buy. Like, they're talking about what's the best pram, what's the best running shoe, what's the best crib, what's the best baby monitor. Like, all of these conversations are going down on Peanut. So it is prime real estate for any business that wants to target mums. So I love brand partnerships. I love coming up with like strategic, fresh ways to talk about a problem, a product, or something that will benefit women. So definitely like looking to work with brands that maybe like aren't super obvious, that we haven't worked with in the past, and just coming up with creative ways to bring that to life, both on the product and in real life.
So how would you literally go about like a baby monitor, or even like an energy gummy, if you will? Like, how would you bring that into the app? How does
what would
that
be my campaign idea?
Well, like how do brands work with Peanut like that? to get in front of the women?
So they can do things like sponsored forums. So we
Okay.
could come up with a forum, promote it in the app, promote it across our socials, promote it across their socials, drive women to a space where they're like only speaking about their postpartum experience, and maybe it's sponsored by like a postpartum hair care brand.
And how do you do that without them feeling like, oh, this is just a weird like sponsored forum? I don't want it. This isn't authentic.
It wouldn't be obvious that it's
so it's more subtle.
Sponsored, and we would offer a lot of value back to the people in that as part of the sponsorship. So like maybe there's at-home workouts that are also tied into this in some kind of way, where like we're giving people access to like yoga they can do from home. Maybe we've brought in a whole bunch of creators who are also postpartum right now who are going to do like live sessions through that forum talking about what they're dealing with at that moment. It could be a way where everyone who's postpartum at that time can like meet other mums in their network who are also like in their community, who are also 10 weeks postpartum, because that's what the app shows. Like right now when I'm on it, it shows the ages of my kids, where I'm located. I can meet up with other mums at a similar stage to me. I'm in groups at the moment that are like October babies, 2025 or whatever year I had him. So it's like it's much more holistic, like loads of different parts to bring it to life and actually make sure that it creates value for our community, as opposed to you just seeing like an ad to link out to a product.
Okay. Is there anything on the app for women in my position that are scared?
Kind of. So there's trying to conceive.
Yeah.
So like once you've made the decision that you're going to start trying, you can set up your profile as trying to conceive, and all the other women that are in the same position as you will be shown to you, and there are trying to conceive communities.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally about to post this on my Instagram last night because I joined a group yesterday that's 2 under 2 support group.
Yeah.
And I got it saved in my phone because the conversations I have with people on Instagram are a lot about like, how do I navigate career and motherhood? I'm pregnant, applying for a role, don't know what to do. I do think that there's opportunity on Peanut to create forums for those sorts of things. Like I'd love to create a group where companies that are posting job sharing roles are able to promote those roles, or like parental leave covers, or really amazing flexible workplaces are able to gain exposure in there. And it's like all women looking for that, or we're able to talk about how we hack through the juggle, or you know, another good thing about Peanut is you can post incognito, so you can be completely anonymous to like actually discuss those sorts of things. I've also thought about how we can open it up to people who know they want to have children, but not right now because they're still, you know, on that journey in a way. But I think we will also be starting to focus much more on just women's health more broadly. So like endo, PCOS, like Peanut really could be a place where women are sort of united by the different like health challenges that they're going through.
Even like a breast check tutorial. Things like that. Absolutely. Okay, so we are out of time because you have to go to preschool and suss it. Very important. Thank you so much for joining me. I literally feel like I could chat to you for hours about all of these things. Maybe we'll get you back.
This time flew. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you. I am so excited to have you on the podcast because I know that so many Australian women look up to you. Perhaps you don't know that as like, because before you like laughed it off, but I'm quite serious. Like
it's actually scary though. I'm like, oh, I don't know if you should.
No, like I think you're so authentic about the whole thing, all of it, from Bumble to like where you started to just question marks to even you being like, I know what I'm doing, but I mean, does anyone know what they're doing? Like you are so relatable as an Australian woman. And I think to other Aussies that are traveling and like looking up to you career-wise, I think you're doing an incredible service. And even the way that you're leading with Peanut and just leading with so much integrity, thank you. And also thank you for talking about it because it's super important. So where can people find you?
On Instagram.
Yes.
Michelle Battersby is my handle.
Peanut.
Give it a follow.
Yes.
I am on TikTok, but I'm unhinged on TikTok.
Yeah, you're a bit rogue, but I love that. And you're doing a day in the life of this today, which is very fun. So tune in.
You'll see it there. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for the gummy.
No probs.
I'm going to soar through the rest of my day.
That is it for today's episode. We have packed the show notes with links and references to pretty much everything that we talked about. I hope this podcast has inspired you and made you just that little bit more obsessed with your own creative process and practice. If you loved it, please hit the subscribe button or the follow button, depending on where you're listening, or send it to a friend that's building something creative of their own. You guys know you can always DM me. Please let me know if you loved this episode. Process is a tiny little baby in the scheme of the podcast land, so we need all the love that we can get. You can find us sharing way more about the antics and the behind the scenes of Process over on Instagram and TikTok at Process the Podcast. And we're also now on YouTube, so you can find your episodes there too. I will see you next Sunday.